What is going on, everybody? This is Johnny here with Sierra Whiskey Co. And today we are going to be talking about pistol red dots and the truth on pistol red dots. We're going to talk about the benefits, the drawbacks, batteries, and spoiler alert, they all break. Now, the basis for this information is working with different organizations such as LAPD, Las Vegas Metro, Houston PD, Special Forces groups, different teams, as well as every alphabet soup agency that exists and doesn't exist, as well as many pistol instructors. Before we touch on that, I want you to look at the majesty of this 4570 Magnum Research revolver. It has a 10-inch barrel. And when we hit 1,000 subscribers, I'm gonna drive on up to Pillager, Minnesota, and I'm gonna have them set the front sight back and thread it for a suppressor. And we're probably gonna video it too. 10-inch barrel revolver, 8-inch suppressor. I cannot think of too many more things that are that awesome. If you enjoy our content, please share this video, like it, and subscribe. Once we hit 1,000, it's gonna happen. So let's talk about red dots that are mounted on reciprocating slides. The truth is, on these micro red dots, it's not if they'll break, it's when they'll break. If you get a good unit, quality control was exceptional, there is nothing wrong with that unit, no issues whatsoever, you're gonna get about 20 to maybe 30,000 rounds out of that before that unit breaks. I'm sorry for all you fanboys out there who really love a specific brand. It does not matter the brand. Right around that time frame or that amount of rounds, that unit is gonna break. Why? If I do have a good unit, is it gonna break at 20 to 30,000 rounds? And the answer is pretty simple. We have something that's like 5 to 10 times smaller than what a carbine optic would be, and it is having at least 10 times the amount of force exerted upon it. Riding back and forth on that reciprocating slide, having all that recoil, that is an immense amount of punishment. And the smaller things are, the harder it is to make them well and durable. So no one brand truly at this point has it figured out. There's no red dot on the market that is the end all be all. It's gonna last as long as your carbine dot. It's just because it's smaller, it has so much force being exerted upon it that the technology just hasn't gotten there yet. But I think within the next 2, maybe 3 generations of micro red dots, we might actually be there. So let's talk about the benefits of having a micro red dot on a pistol. It's like cheating, because what we're doing is we're removing one of the fundamentals of marksmanship, and that would be sight alignment. Normally we have our front sight post, we have our rear notch, and we have to align those with our target and our eye. Now, when we have a red dot, the emitter of the red dot is projecting that dot onto that lens that we see, and all we need to do is put that dot onto what we want to hit. And as long as it's zeroed and we have a nice trigger press, we should hit our mark. So removing one of the fundamentals of marksmanship, it is like cheating. It exposes movement better. The first time you look through a red dot, you put that up, you're gonna notice that it's kind of shaking all over the place. What we don't realize is our iron sights hide a lot of the movement that we have. So we think we're doing much better than we actually are. Since that exposes that movement, it allows us to work to improve so we aren't moving as much. That would be benefit number 2. Benefit number 3 plays into this. Because that movement is exaggerated, we have the opportunity to learn from it, and that especially plays into our trigger press. If we can see where our shot is breaking, like low left or right or high, that's information that we can use to correct what we're doing faster. That's why dry firing with a red dot will give you a much better trigger press much quicker, because we're exposing those little movements, we're refining until that trigger finger knows exactly what it should be doing in order to break that shot correctly. I would say benefit number 4, accuracy. The vast majority of people you see, once they switch to a micro red dot on their pistol, their groups are going to shrink by at least 50%. Now that is very substantial, and I think it plays into that trigger press being better, you having that feedback, and removing one of the fundamentals of marksmanship. It makes it easier to be efficient and repeatable, and therefore our accuracy is much better. Okay, so let's talk about some of the drawbacks. Well, we already talked about it. It's going to break. It's not if, it's when. Another drawback is it's kind of expensive. When we put an addition onto our gun, it doesn't mean we have to make another addition. But typically, at this point you do, unless you have a Glock MOS or one of the other versions of pistols that are coming out that are optics ready. A lot of them still are not optics ready. So if you want to put a red dot on there, you're going to have to replace your iron sights, and you're probably going to have to mill your slide, which is really expensive. Now there are the dovetail mounts, which effectively replace your rear iron sight with a plate. Now I don't recommend that unless it's just going to be a ranged gun. If you expect to use this to defend your life at any point, i.e. you conceal carry, or it's your home defense gun, you always want to have 2 sighting systems. We already determined that this micro red dot is going to break at some point, so we should have a valid backup. Now, there is kind of a workaround. I think it's Duick Defense makes the RBU, which is effectively a dovetail mount that has a post in the front and a notch in the rear, so you have a very short sight radius backup. I think that would be fine in an emergency, but it's really not great overall. Suppressor height sights, those sights are not cheap. They're usually somewhere around $100, so you got to factor that into the cost as well. Now, one thing I'd like to discuss is the last drawback, if you would want to call it that, and that is you will see a lot of people who historically are very good at irons, but go to evaluate a dot or have other people do it, and they say, oh, you know, dots are terrible, they're not good for you, because I don't care if you can shoot more accurate, you can't shoot as fast because you're having a hard time finding the dot. And if you can't find the dot, all of those other advantages don't matter. And I just think that that is absolutely ridiculous, because it's something new, so you're gonna have to train to that. The easiest way to get around that is to take your pistol with your red dot on it, get to a low ready, and present, put it back down, and present, put it back down, and present, and do that a few thousand times. Because guess what? That is how you get used to acquiring that dot. And it's free. It doesn't cost anything. So if you're one of those people that are saying that that is a drawback, really it's just because you don't know any better or you're lazy. Either way, you should probably fix it. Now let's talk about batteries. Now, as I said, I'm not speaking from just personal experience. I have talked to some major police departments with huge budgets, engineers, electrical engineers, all that stuff. And the batteries that typically come with a lot of sights aren't great. They tend to be cheap Chinese batteries. The 2 best batteries that I have found through my research and the research of all of these departments who've put a lot of money into it are Sony and Duracell. I would say Duracell is the best. Sony is a close second. And the reason why is because their tolerances are better than a lot of the other brands. So the other brands will have a tolerance window that is too large. That is that the size of the battery varies too much. Upon recoil of that pistol, what's happening is that battery is sliding around in there and it's compressing the contacts on one side or another. And if the tolerance, if it's on the small side, what's going to happen is it's going to lose contact at some point. It's going to break the circuit, and either you're going to get that dot flicker or your dot's going to completely turn off, but you can go ahead and turn it right back on, which is not ideal. So I would say spend the extra money, get the Duracell. If you can't find Duracell, get the Sony. Those are the two best batteries out there, at least for this application. I'd like to make a special point about warranty. So we already know that this site is going to break. Maybe you should have a backup or two for when that happens. However, if you've bought one of the more expensive sites and you can't really afford a backup, or it's just not in your budget, you're likely going to want to make a selection of a site from a company that has a really great warranty, that has a quick turnaround, and it'll take care of you ASAP. That's also another reason to make sure you have a secondary sighting system. At least you'll have irons while your dot's in the shop. I'm going to do a quick rundown of most of the popular sites out there right now and just some of my thoughts on them and stuff I've gathered along the way. Now, the Trijicon SRO seems to be a really great site. That being said, there are stronger potato chips out there, so do not drop it, it will explode. I've seen people with this site on their personal defense pistols, their concealed carry pistols. It's a terrible idea. They go, oh, well, I'm not gonna drop my pistol. Well, no one intends on dropping their pistol, except for if they're testing it. So it might happen. That being said, if you do get into a physical altercation, which happens in most instances where you are going to have to draw your pistol, there's a greater chance of it being knocked out of your hand, or you're wrestling on the ground and it hits something. So having a sight that is rather weak when it comes to durability is not a good idea. Even Trijicon says that it's more of a competition dot, so please don't put that one on your defensive pistol. The next would probably be the most consistent industry standard that has really good quality control as far as I can tell. And due to the design, it seems to be the most durable, is the Trijicon RMR. Now, the things I don't really like about it, that the window has quite a bit of tint to it, so it kind of is just a little off-putting. It doesn't look great. And also it has some distortion to it. So that kind of slows you down a little bit until you get used to it. Other than that, like I said, it's been around for a while. It seems to be the industry standard, but there are a lot of different companies up and coming now and some more unique designs coming out. Now, the loopholed Delta Point Pro seems to be a pretty popular choice. It does have a very nice window. I don't really have much to say about it other than that the one button adjustment is a little bit wonky and kind of frustrating. However, their battery compartment is really nice and it makes it really easy to change a battery. So it kind of offsets there. The shield, that shield sight is incredibly low. I think it has a little notch cut out of it so you can co-witness with factory sights. It's kind of a cool option. I like the idea of it, but the feedback I've heard on it is it actually breaks quite frequently. The departments that I've talked to who have tested them kind of ruled them out because of that. So I don't necessarily want to have a sight on my pistol that breaks significantly more often than the other ones, since we already know that it's going to break after X amount of rounds. Now, the Aimpoint Acro. When I saw the sight, I was super excited about it. I was like, oh yes, finally someone solved the issue. It's going to be the holy grail of sights. And I really haven't heard too much more about it after that. Unfortunately, I believe they had some battery life issues. It does take kind of a weird battery because of the design of the sight. So I mean, it seems like the Acro is the mailbox that delivers sometimes. You know, I thought it would have taken over the market by now, but it just doesn't seem to be doing that. It might also be because it's pretty darn expensive. I think it goes for somewhere around $600. for a sight that doesn't really seem to live up to the glory of their carbine sights, which are really amazing. Now the Vortex offerings, of which I have both the Venom and Viper here, I think they are good budget options. However, each one of them kind of has their drawbacks. It's almost like if you could have taken both of those and combined the best thing of each one, you would probably have a really nice sight. So we have the Viper and the Venom. So the Viper has a one-piece design, however, it does have lock screws in the back, which are obstructed by the rear iron sight, and it also has a bottom loading battery, which kind of makes it a huge pain to zero it and also to change the battery. Now that being said, once you have it zeroed, as long as you're putting the same amount of torque onto the screws after you change your battery, I have not found that I have to re-zero it. So that isn't really an issue, but you always want to verify your zero. Now this has a one-piece housing here, whereas the Venom has a two-piece housing. You can see that that comes to a 90-degree angle there. The Venom has a top-loading battery, which makes it a lot easier. It does not have lock screws, which also makes it easier. However, that two-piece body is not as inherently strong from a design standpoint as the one-piece body of the Viper. So, like I said, you kind of have two sights which are needing to be combined with certain aspects. They don't have great battery life. They probably have one of the lower battery lives out there, which also isn't the greatest. However, I do think overall they are a good value, and Vortex has a legendary warranty, and they have probably the most amazing customer service I've ever seen out of any company in existence. So that does go a long way with people. Next, the Burris Fastfire. As far as the quality of the sight, I would probably put that in line with the Vortex Viper and Venom. They seem to be very, very, very similar. Again, probably a good choice for someone who's budget conscious. Now the Sig Romeo. I haven't used it personally. However, I have not heard great things either. Sig is pretty new to the optics game. They're very ambitious in that space, which is awesome. That being said, if a sight isn't performing great, you're probably going to need to be working with their warranty department or getting service. In the past, I have not had great experiences trying to get a hold of Sig. I believe the last time I took 5 or 6 calls. I got through to somebody. They didn't know the answer. It was actually a pretty simple question. And I ultimately had to go see them at TriggerCon and talk to a few people in their booth before I finally got a correct answer. So I don't know if anyone else has had different experiences. Maybe they have, and hopefully they're better than mine. Sig does make some great products. I think with the next generation or two of their red dot sights, they'll really start to get there. Some of their other things are really great, like their rangefinders. But, you know, can't be perfect in all areas at once. I would say the biggest up-and-coming player on the horizon seems to be Holosun. I have run into some guys who really know their stuff that absolutely love Holosun. They have a really cool design in their 509T. I think that seems to be, in my opinion, what is the current answer to a lot of the issues on the red dot market. So they have the closed emitter, they have the solar panel, they have the shake awake, they have is also running on the battery. So you have incredibly long battery life, and from what I can tell, it's really durable. I've heard nothing but good things about the micro red dots for pistols from Holosun, and a lot of people just seem to love them. I've also heard that they have a pretty good warranty and that they're easy to work with. They also seem to be fairly cost effective. I would watch out for that 509T and for their future models. They're probably going to be pretty darn good. The last thing, if it matters where it's made, then your best bet is probably going to be something like a Trijicon RMR or a Leupold Delta Point Pro, or potentially the Acro. A lot of the other optics are made in China or the Philippines or some other country that is not TAA compliant. Now, TAA compliant means Trade Agreements Act. The Trade Agreements Act effectively says the optic has to be manufactured or substantially transformed either in the US or one of the other designated TAA countries. More specifically, it's like, not China, not the Philippines. It usually means like Japan or the US. So in summation, I've effectively told you to spend a lot of money and put something on your pistol that will eventually break. Why? Because, well, as you probably heard already, it's the wave of the future, and it'll make you a better shooter if you put in just a little bit of effort. I think red dots make better shooters faster. So go ahead, like and subscribe. Please share this if you found it informative, and we'll continue our All About Optics series with something else in the future. So until next time, keep on rocking in the free world. F. Scott Fitzgerald, I can't remember what I was gonna say. And every alphabet soup agency that exists and does not exist.